Focus on Headline. All right, let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio, we have our reporters in Lee Ji-young and Kwon So-ah. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening to you guys as well. We're going to start things off here. The arrival of the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Nimitz and, of course, its accompanying ships in South Korean waters has, of course, caused a stir to who? Pyongyang, confirming it had fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles on Monday. This as part of its military training. We did get this news quite late. Ji-young, nevertheless, let's get more on this.
Sure. Now, the region's tensions in Northeast Asia, especially in the Korean Peninsula, has increased further due to the 7th missile test conducted by North Korea this month. The continuous escalation of North Korea's weapon tests and South Korea-U.S. joint military exercises has created a cycle of retaliation, intensifying the situation here on the peninsula. Now, according to North Korea's state-run news agency, known as the Korean Central News Agency, said that the 2 missiles were fired off North Korea's East Coast landing outside Japan's exclusive economic zone as a part of a missile unit training for a simulated nuclear air explosion. Now, the North said that it detonated a mock nuclear warhead 500 meters above a target islet off Kimchek City in Hamgyeongbuk-do province. Now, on the previous day, the South Korean military announced that it had detected 2 short-range missiles fired by North Korea on the morning of the 27th from 7:47 to 8 a.m. Now, the training drill was designed to test and certify the nuclear attack command process, and also the North Korean commanding officer who led the exercise said that their mission is clear and they know what they need to do if a similar situation arises, and that they will surely destroy the enemy if they were engaged in combat.
Of course, not the first time that we've seen these unique provocations now coming in from North Korea. We've talked about these underwater nuclear torpedoes that apparently North Korea now has the capacity to do. We've talked about detonating these mock nuclear warheads mid-air. This in order to basically wipe out both South Korea and Japan is what they're targeting here. But North Korea, though, is not only increasing its nuclear stockpile, but it's also trying to, again, create new ways to deliver these weapons. We've always thought that the only way they're going to be using, if they do, and we're hoping that there's never a situation where they do use a nuclear weapon, and I'm sure they're not going to, considering the fact that they're probably going to lose their entire country. The regime is going to lose their power. But we've always thought that it's basically shooting these ballistic missiles with a miniaturized nuclear warhead, probably land in territorial areas, and then basically explode. But they're finding new ways to do this. Again, they've also announced that they've successfully tested this new underwater drone capable of carrying these nuclear weapons. Let's talk about all these different ways of using these nuclear weapons, Ji-young.
Sure. Now, the first test of the Haeil, which means tsunami in Korean, was allegedly carried out last week in what Pyongyang said was a response to the recent South Korea-U.S. military joint exercises. However, South Korea's military has expressed doubts about the claim and suggests the test may have been exaggerated or even fabricated. Now, despite this, North Korea's state media reported that the drone had successfully tracked a 600-kilometer route underwater for about 41 hours before destroying a target in North Hamgyong province. Now, the country claims that the test proved the drone's reliability and safety, but some experts believe that creating this type of weapon may be beyond North Korea's technological capabilities. But what is clear is that the country is trying to diversify its methods of delivering nuclear weapons. And also with the recent provocations, North Korea is actually sending a very clear and coherent message that they are fighting for recognition as a perfect nuclear power.
Yeah, however, doesn't seem like a perfect nuclear power, again, when they're exaggerating the technology that they have. And again, as I mentioned this on the program before, it's not the first time they've exaggerated the technology. They've showcased their Hwasong 8, that is their hypersonic ballistic missile before. And a lot of people are saying if North Korea has hypersonic missiles, it is a big concern. But according to some of the military experts, according to the way that the missile actually moves, it's not a hypersonic missile. And so, again, not the first time they've exaggerated this. But so let's talk more in depth about the North Korea's latest claims on their nuclear weapons project here. How is South Korea assessing these, and how big of a threat are these recent developments?
Well, whether or not the statements provided by North Korea state media are true or false, and whether or not the photo showing tactical nuclear warheads indeed shows real nuclear warheads or not, Pyongyang clearly seems to be determined to further develop its nuclear weapons program and not step back in countering what it calls threats from South Korea and the U.S. Regarding the 8 types of tactical nuclear warheads, or Hwasan-31, that were claimed to have been inspected by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, according to the KCNA, it's significant in that it's the first time that Pyongyang has revealed tactical nuclear warheads, of which, however, more than 10 appeared to have been displayed. I could count 10, exactly 10 in the photo, but they were aligned, so maybe they had even more than 10. The warheads are estimated to be 40 to 50 centimeters in diameter, colored in military green with only the front part in red. Now, North Korea's aim, according to South Korean pundits, is showing off that it has made progress in miniaturizing nuclear warheads that can mount various of its solid fuel short-range ballistic missiles, such as the KN-25, KN-24, and KN-23 that it had relentlessly been testing since last year. South Korea's military and intelligence are thoroughly analyzing the photos released by the North media, and while they're focusing on the veracity of the warheads based on the length, diameter, etc. Until now, officials here did not believe North Korea is able to miniaturize nuclear warheads small enough to mount them on SRBMs. Only they mentioned that the North technology has considerably progressed. Just last week, in fact, Defense Minister, or actually less than a week ago, Defense Minister Lee Jong-seop made a similar remark at a parliamentary session, adding that Seoul and Washington are looking into any possibilities. While there are doubts on the credibility of the North's recent report, with people calling them exaggerated or even fabricated, some experts who analyzed the photo said if Pyongyang's claim is true, the yield of it was suggested at 10 kilotons, the yield being the amount of energy released when a nuclear weapon is detonated. Shin Jong-woo, a senior analyst at the Korea Defense Security Forum, said the diameter seems to be less than 500 millimeters, so it seems to have been miniaturized for the purpose of installing it in various weapon systems such as super large rocket launchers. Now, regardless of the warhead's capabilities, there are speculations that North Korea's 7th nuclear test might be imminent. And we did see a similar pattern being observed in the past. In 2016 and 2017, the North unveiled its nuclear warheads, and soon after it conducted its 5th and 6th nuclear test. And the 6th test, even a few hours after its nuclear warhead was unveiled in the morning, it did conduct its nuclear test.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for many years now, whether or not North Korea is able to fully miniaturize their nuclear warhead. And this is one of the main reasons as to why the U.S. for the longest time, they don't really comment much on the short-range ballistic missiles because, again, I mean, their big threat is whether or not it could reach the mainland United States, right? But then that's the reason why they've always been, very critical of the ICBMs. And if they're able to mount these nuclear warheads, miniaturize it, and then, mount it on these ICBMs, it's capable of landing in the U.S. territory is what they're concerned about. But they've only tested the dummy warhead so far, so we don't even know if they have the technology just yet, but we can't assume. But I mean, big question is North Korea really foolish enough to actually use it? No, probably. And they're using this as sort of a threat, saying, listen, we have the capability now. Let's talk. Let's start talking now, because as soon as the United States declare them as a nuclear state, then, of course, now they have more leverage, and there's going to be more consensus is that as soon as North Korea conducts their seventh nuclear test and they prove that they can miniaturize their nuclear warhead is when South Korea, United States, and even maybe Japan is going to try to get in on the talks here and go, all right, let's start talking about sanction reliefs and whether or not you'll back up on the nuclear development. But they're definitely not going to slow down the nuclear development. It is their greatest deterrence, as they learned from Russia during this ongoing war in Ukraine. Moving on here, the United Nations released a new report saying that North Korea continues to operate political prison camps, not surprising, where prisoners are executed in secret. 4 nationals are held captive. Jiang, let's get more on this report.
Sure. Now, the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner, also known as OHCHR, published the report on Tuesday titled, "These Wounds Do Not Heal: Enforced Disappearance and Abductions Done by North Korea," which is based on 80 in-depth interviews conducted by the OHCHR from 2016 to 2022. Now, enforced disappearance is when someone is arrested or detained by the government, but their family or friends are not told where they are or when they were took, and they are not given, of course, a fair trial. Now, the UN report states that some victims are executed with no information provided to the families, and the government never officially informs relatives about secret executions. Now, the report also found that the victims of enforced disappearance have suffered human rights violations for many years. And the U.S. called for North Korea to publish a list of all foreign nationals currently imprisoned in the country. And the total number, of course, remains unknown at the moment. And Pyongyang has ignored dozens of UN's requests for information about its role in enforced disappearances since 2021. Now, what we know so far is that 6 South Korean nationals remain in North Korean detention places, in addition to 13 Japanese citizens who were abducted by North Korea in the 1970s and 80s. Now, the OHCHR also called on North Korea to recognize that enforced disappearances have happened and to stop committing these violations immediately. Now, the report also called for the North Korean government to return abduction victims and release people who have been detained for political reasons. Now, the report emphasized that the North Korean government needs to investigate allegations of these enforced disappearances thoroughly and hold those responsible accountable.
Of course, North Korea denies the fact that there are these prison camps. They deny the fact that there are human rights violations. And anytime the U.S. or the UN kind of gets in on talk about human rights issues in North Korea, they kind of they basically go, well, what about you guys over in the United States? Always like shooting people and things like that. But there has been many testimonies from many North Korean refugees. I've heard testimonies from people who have been caught trying to defect North Korea on numerous occasions. And I don't know how they go through all that torture and all the prison camp stuff, and then they go spending years in there, and then come out and they try to defect once again, which kind of shows you how bad it is in North Korea that they've risked their lives to defect. But there are also still many there in North Korea facing these human rights violations, and it is really unfortunate. But the other unfortunate fact is the fact that despite the fact that there are these reports coming out, there is little that we can do, as North Korea is going to continue to deny it. They're not going to let anyone to come into these prison camps and inspect these sites. Let's go over to Japan, where I'm going to get really upset now here, ladies and gentlemen. The Japanese government approved new textbooks for elementary school students, not middle school, not high school. We're talking about elementary school students here this Tuesday, which apparently aims to water down the country's coercive nature of its historic wrongdoings. It also stepped up its sovereignty over Korea's Dokdo islets. So let's get the latest on this.
Right. Textbooks that will be used starting next year by Japan's elementary students in more detail from grade 3 to grade 6. These have been approved. A revision of these have been approved, and it's about 149 textbooks that passed a review by the Japanese Education Ministry, which does these revisions on a regular basis. And samples of some textbooks that were analyzed by South Korean media here say that Japan watered down descriptions of Japan's wartime atrocities against Korea during its 1910 to 45 colonization of Korea. So there has been made a comparison to a current textbook where Korean men were conscripted as soldiers when talking about those forced to serve in Japan's military. Now, the new version says that they participated in the military. It makes it sound as if they joined voluntarily. And also regarding South Korea's Dokdo islets, it's described as Japan's indigenous territory, and that South Korea's occupation claims are, quote, illegal. And South Korea's government has, of course, protested against this approval, voicing deep regret over the approval of the textbooks. In fact, South Korea's foreign ministry has had an announcement saying the Korean government expresses deep regret, quote, that the Japanese government approved the contents of elementary school textbooks that continue to make the unreasonable claims they have made over the past several decades. That's according to the spokesperson. And also these wrong claims over Dokdo and downplaying of forced labor during World War II. This has been some issues that South Koreans may have had some hope about, that Japan would, not change its opinions, or at least not change their opinions, and not even make it worse in these textbooks, because recently we had a bilateral summit between President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, but it seems like those talks have not really influenced Tokyo's stance on historical and territorial issues at all.
So simply put, it seems like you're not going to get any of my entire 40,000 won in my bank account, because we had a side bet going on that Japan is going to be changing its stance and start being a little bit more apologetic, number one, a little bit more truthful about the actual history. And so that's too bad. But
we did not have an expiry date regarding that.
I am more than glad to give you 40,000 Korean won. But you know what? This is really, really concerning, because when you're talking about young kids, right? I remember when I was young, my mom told me that my dad went to the moon, and that is the biggest lie, but I believed it because I was a kid. And I went to school saying my dad went to the moon on show and tell, and I got, the laughing stock of the class. But I believed it because I was taught at a very young age, when you're a young kid, you believe everything that you're told. And this is the scary, scary truth about why learning proper history is very important, which is why I am so glad that we're going to be talking about this particular historical figure in the second hour of the program during K-History Fun Facts. Let's move on here. Reports have emerged that there is tension within South Korean government over the foreign affairs and national security agendas ahead of President Yoon Suk-yeol's upcoming visit to the United States. This, of course, to mark the 70th anniversary of the bilateral alliance. Jiyoung, let's get the latest on this.
Sure. Now, there have been changes in the Yongsan presidential office staff with key positions within the foreign and security policy teams being replaced. And this is causing concerns because it happened just before President Yoon's scheduled visit to the U.S. Now, this has led to speculations that there may have been some disagreements between the president and his advisors over certain aspects of the U.S. visit, including the coordination of events and activities during his trip. Now, some analysts have suggested that in the recent personnel changes, the changes may have been related to disagreements over the coordinating visits, and that's why it has caused tensions. But others have suggested that the changes are simply part of a routine reshuffle of personnel. Now, to make matters worse, the replacements occurred at a time when the country's foreign policy is facing quite a significant change and some challenges. Now, North Korea, as we reported, has recently conducted missile tests, and the Biden administration is reviewing its policy toward the Korean Peninsula, toward a more strong grip towards North Korea. So there has been a lot of tension here in the Korean Peninsula. And the changes in the South Korean president's team may have been prompted by the country's ongoing efforts to kind of adapt to these changes. Also, some experts have suggested that the reshuffle might have been related to some of the upcoming general elections in South Korea, which will be held in 2024. Now, some observers believe that the reshuffle is a part of a larger strategy to bolster the current administration's chances of staying in power or maintaining its influence in the government, influence in the next government. Now, there's even speculation that the current foreign minister, Park Jin, and also the security Vice Director Kim Tae-ho and also the U.S. Head diplomat Cho Tae-yong and so on will run for next year's general election. Now, overall, the recent changes in South Korea's foreign policy team may have raised some questions and concern as the country faces some significant diplomatic and security challenge. And the current staff reshuffle will be critical in shaping its response to these challenges. But to end this report on a positive note, there is a chance that the K-pop girl group Blackpink and Lady Gaga are going to perform together in the White House during President Yoon's visit to Washington, but it's not 100% sure, but the two parties are definitely in talks to doing so.
Interesting stuff there. Blackpink and Lady Gaga. That is a very unusual combination there. But let's move on to the disgraced crypto CEO. We're talking about Do Kwon, or also known as Kwon Do-hyung is his full Korean name. He is, of course, the CEO of Terraform's Lab, the key figure linked to the Terra Luna crash that we talked about, which affected about 200,000 people, at least just here in South Korea. Now, following his arrest in Montenegro, there's been much attention on where he's going to be facing these charges. There's actually a number of countries. South Korea wants him. The U.S. wants him. Also, Singapore wants him as well. So there's three countries involved, but I think kind of like Singapore's out of this right now. It's going to be either the South Koreans or the U.S. But so you're going to tell us that it's expected to be even more complicated in this battle on who's going to punish this man. Everyone wants a piece of this guy right now.
Right. So last week when we spoke about this, it was just about, is it going to be Korea or the U.S.? Now, Kwon Do-hyung is facing multiple charges over his failed cryptocurrency venture, including security frauds, wire fraud, commodities fraud, conspiracy. And the competition on where he should be extradited also expanded to Singapore, as you mentioned, SJ, as investigations there have also been underway. But here's the new obstacle for all the prosecutions and police of these countries. Montenegro won't be letting Kwon go anywhere for the next weeks because there, as we know, the fugitive has been charged with forgery as he was found to have been using false documents from Costa Rica, and later on also forged passport from Belgium was found in his luggage. There they found a Korean passport and a Belgian passport, and Interpol later then revealed that the Belgian passport was forged. So authorities in Montenegro say that the passport forgery must be handled before anything else. A Montenegrin prosecutor investigating the case said Kwon's extradition won't be happening within the 30-day detention period. It was actually extended before to the 30 days. And even after the ruling, it cannot be ruled out that Montenegro wants Kwon to face his charges in its country first. And under Montenegrin law, forging official documents means a sentence of a minimum of 3 months to 5 years in prison. So at this point, we really don't know what's going to happen after the 30 days.
Yeah, even the 30-day detention extension that he received, he's actually trying to fight this right now. And what he's trying to do is, let's face it, that 3 months to 5 years is so much better than whatever he's going to be getting in South Korea and the United States. In fact, there's actually a lot of people, even amongst the crypto community here in South Korea, just send them to the United States to have harsher punishment is what they're saying. But all joking aside, he's going to fight this, and he's going to drag this on by he's already appealed the 30-day detention period, and even if they go into trial for the forgery charges that he's facing in Montenegro, it's not like they go into trial and then, next week, all right, you're found guilty, you're going to spend 5 years. It's going to be dragged on for months and months and months, maybe even over a year. It could go years and stuff like that, depending on how they drag this out, is what it is. But the fact of the matter is, because there is no extradition treaty between neither South Korea and Montenegro and the United States and Montenegro. I believe Singapore also doesn't have a extradition treaty, which is why he was hiding in Montenegro in the first place. It does get very, very complicated here. And where his money is, we don't even know. He's probably, he flipped it into Bitcoin and he probably sent it to another wallet, is what a lot of people are speculating. We're going to talk about U.S. banks. As we talked about, we've seen very volatile stock markets because of these bank failures. We talked about the very first one being the Silicon Valley Bank over in the United States. Seeked bankruptcy. And then on Monday, it was brought by its rival, the First Citizens Bank. And Jiang, tell us more about the acquisition and how this will affect the market.
Sure. Now, on March 27th, the share price of U.S. community bank First Citizens Bank Shares Incorporation rose up to 49% during trading on the New York Stock Exchange. Now, before the market opened, what happened was that the First Citizens Bank announced that it had agreed to acquire all of SVB's deposits and loans, as well as the bank's assets worth $72 billion for a discounted price of $16.5 billion US dollars. Now, starting on the same day, all 17 SVB branches were renamed First Citizens Bank branches as well. So the good news here has also boosted the share prices of other struggling regional banks, in particular the First Republic Bank, which has been touted as the quote-unquote second SVB. Its stock prices rose by over 30% at one point in the morning yesterday, and also continues to maintain a double-digit rise. Also, Bloomberg reported that the U.S. financial authorities are considering expanding emergency lending facilities. Now, several other community banks, such as KeyCorp, Trust Financial, PacWest, and Western Alliance, have also seen their share prices rise by between 5% and 8%. Now, the recent bankruptcy of SVB, which was the second largest bank failure in the U.S. history, has caused uncertainty and anxiety to spread among U.S. community banks over the past 2 weeks. As a result, withdrawals from these banks have increased and their stock prices have plummeted. And the impact of these events was felt worldwide with, as we know, Credit Suisse, which is a large European investment bank, also experienced some instability. So actually, with this new acquisition, we're seeing somewhat of a recovery in the banking industry.
Definitely good news on that front. Let's move on to some domestic issues. The government has announced its plans for next year's budget this Tuesday, which will be almost 5% up from this year's budget. So there's a lot of figures here, a lot of big numbers. Let's get the details.
Right. The cabinet approved the government's guidelines for the 2024 budget this Tuesday, which has been proposed at around 670 trillion won, or roughly 515 billion US dollars. And that's 4.8% up from this year's 638.7 trillion won, or roughly 491.3 billion US dollars. And this meets an earlier plan that encompasses fiscal management between 2022 and 26 that put the growth rate of its budget at below 5% for the upcoming year. So that's why we have that 4.8%.
Do you want to cough?
No, I don't. Why did my throat sound?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Anyways,
back.
Okay.
So where does the government plan to invest in more? Strengthening the defense and security sectors and creating jobs for young people. In terms of the defense budget, of course, to better deal with North Korea's nuclear and missile threats and strengthening South Korea's military capabilities. Public safety will also take up an important pie of the budget. Public safety systems related to the prevention of crimes linked to drugs, digital sexual violence, stalking, etc. And also, the government is looking for better systems to prepare for natural and other disasters. According to the Finance Ministry, strengthening fiscal soundness amid the growing national debt has also been called on by the president. President Yoon at the cabinet meeting said the government will maintain, quote, financial soundness by pursuing strong fiscal reforms to ensure not a single penny of taxpayers' money goes to waste. President Yoon also put emphasis on nurturing future growth engines, creating quality jobs, and strengthening welfare programs for the vulnerable. So now government ministries and agencies have to draw up their spending plans by the end of May, and then they're going to submit this to the National Assembly by September 1st.
We have more numbers to talk about. This time, the South Korean government planned to make some big changes to taxes this year. This is always a sensitive issue. They're going to reduce the amount of money that people and businesses have to pay by, this is a lot, around 70 trillion won. Roughly, that comes out to about 53 billion US dollars here, which is the largest tax reduction in history. Chiang, let's get the details of this.
Sure. Now, South Korea's finance ministry announced on Tuesday that the government plans to reduce taxes in several different areas. And to be exact, the amount will be 69.3 trillion won, which is a 9.1% increase compared to the previous year. Now, for the individuals, the government is planning to increase the basic deduction for income taxes. This means that people will be able to earn more money before they have to start paying income taxes. Now, they're also planning to increase the child tax credit and expand the earned income credit tax credit, which will help low-income earners. Now, about 43.3 trillion won of that will go to people, with most of it's going to people who are in the low-income or the middle-income bracket. Now, for businesses, they're planning to reduce the corporate tax rate from 25% to a whopping 20% over the next 2 years. Now, they're also planning to increase the R&D tax credit from 30% to 40%, and this will encourage businesses to invest in research and development, which can help them create new products and technologies. However, the government is being careful to make sure that they don't reduce taxes too much. They're also going to be reviewing some tax breaks to make sure they're really helping the businesses and not just giving them a free ride. They're also planning to manage tax expenditures more strictly and strengthen efforts to comply with the tax reduction limit. So overall, the South Korean government hopes that these tax reductions will help the economy grow and make life a little bit easier for people and businesses. However, they're also being careful, so by offering incentives as well and making other changes to the tax code. And also they hope to encourage economic growth and help the business succeed.
I do wonder when this is going to come in effect, because my tax season is coming up. I believe for freelancers, we start filing taxes come May,
That's right.
So
all three of us.
being that in the middle income. Well, so this doesn't cater to you, because being a high income.
What are you guys talking about? You're in the same boat, SJ. Come on.
The top 10% income earner. This certainly does not affect you, Soa, but for Samins like me, it is certainly going to really help me with this. Guys, let's talk about something that we've been following up on quite a bit. And I believe, Jiyoung, even yourself, you were talking about this even before I even mentioned this story on the show. We're talking about Chun Woo-won. If our listeners are not too familiar with this with this name, he is the grandson of Chun Do-hwan, who has been apprehended by the police at Incheon International Airport today. This is over suspected drug use. I don't know if anyone's seen any of the video footages coming out. He's called out his family, saying that basically the disgraced president and his black money, his family has really used all that money to pay for his tuition and things like that, and they're living good lives because of this. Well, it seems like Chun wants to apologize to the victims of the 1980 military crackdown. His grandfather was, of course, responsible for. So let's get more on this.
Sure. The 27-year-old grandson of former President Chun Do-hwan, who is a son of the late president's second son, who recently opened up on his social media to reveal his family's irregularities and called his grandfather a slaughterer, has been apprehended upon arrival in South Korea this Tuesday Tuesday from New York. Now, he was detained by drug crime investigators of the Seoul Metropolitan Agency. He is suspected of illegal drug use, as he himself has been hinting towards when he made his online revelations, where he called himself guilty as well. And in interviews at the airport, he mentioned that again, as he called himself a sinner. He said, the life of other people is as precious as my life, and the sin rests with me because I'm alive, but they are no longer alive. With that, he was referring to the victims of military crackdowns in Gwangju during the Chun Doo-won administration. Chun Won mentioned that he is blessed to have a chance to apologize to those who were hurt. And on Sunday, he took to his Instagram where he posted his flight schedule and said he plans to apologize to the victims and bereaved families of the Gwangju pro-democracy movement, and that he will want to do that as soon as he gets there. But he did mention that he doesn't know whether he'll be first arrested or not. So first things first, police will conduct a drug test on him and look into the related allegations to decide whether an arrest warrant will be issued or not.
Basically, the last video that went out, I believe, he was, apparently using some kind of drugs, and then, he knocked out, right? And then, the ambulances came, and then, they said he wasn't even conscious, was what the last report was coming out. All of a sudden, he appears in Incheon International Airport. I don't know how few people feel about this, but, I have no direct family impacted by the Gwangju crackdowns, but the consensus is that it doesn't, because I believe Chun Doo-won's son, one of his sons, has also apologized on many occasions. But the thing is, Chun Doo-won left this world without apologizing, and the most important thing is you get the apology from the person directly responsible for all the wrongdoing here. But this is going to get quite interesting because it seems like he's going to reveal all the black money and the money that his family used and things like that. And but if he's going to get arrested first, we don't know. But nevertheless, quite an interesting revelation here. Nevertheless, guys, as always, thank you very much for your reports today. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
See you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.